good afternoon, everyone. So I would like to present today some ideas about how we could use AI, both in medical care, but also in terms of improving medical products in the medical product life cycle. So when we collect data from medicine, we collect a lot of information, which is in this pyramid of information is at the bottom. However, what clinicians normally want to do is to be able to take decisions, and that decision needs to exercise the wisdom they have in the use of the data that is available. Whether it is to diagnose a patient or an engineer that is trying to improve the next generation of medical devices, we ask questions that are related to the implementation and taking of decision based on the data. But that is not easily available. We need to process and we need to model the data. Computational medicine, which is the area that I work personally in, is where engineering, medicine, and computer science, informatics, mathematics, physics come together. It's the area where we use AI to actually use it like a GPS that guides from where we are to where we want to be in the context of medicine. Is it enough to have lots of data? We talk sometimes about big data times. Pure data is not enough. In this axis, in this diagram, in the x-axis, I'm showing the next few years, and in the vertical axis, what we show is how the complexity of the problems that we are trying to solve grows, or how the data grows, or how the computational power grows. And some researchers have shown that computational power and data grow exponentially, and that actually data grows at a faster pace than our ability to compute and analyze. And that's a problem, because very soon we will have more data that we will be able to take care of and analyze. While actually the red line shows the complexity of the problems that we are trying to solve, the diseases, the interactions between diseases, between organ systems. And that grows factorially, grows much faster than any other exponential growth. What does this mean to us? That as we develop, we will need to have ways of interpreting the data that incorporate as much as possible our understanding of disease, the technology that we are developing as well. And that we do that, all of these things symbiotically, as we were told earlier, then we can actually make a difference. So data-driven solutions are important, but still also principle-driven approaches. I want to talk very briefly about digital twins. Many of you would have heard these words, digital twins. These are digital copies of us. And this can be simple forms, like a database where all our information is linked together, but it can also be more complex systems that have not only data, but also information from our health, our environment, our context, so that the interpretation of the data can be contextualized. We want to use digital twins in medicines, and we want to do that by creating computational models of each of us, so that we can also not only know what is happening at the moment, if you do an imaging scan or if you do any laboratory study, you will have an idea about your care, your health status today, right now. But what we also want to know is how things will evolve over time. Like when we do weather forecasting, we want to know the weather tomorrow or the day after, because today we already know, right? To do that, we need the use of digital twins, this data integrated, but also prediction models, either models based on data or models based on first principles, as I was talking before. What can we do with this? Well, I'm going to give you two examples. One example is in the area of AI for healthcare, for diagnosis. All of us know that cardiovascular diseases are the biggest killers nowadays in the world. Now, what about if I tell you that you could know whether you're going to have a heart attack by looking at the vessels in your eyes? The vessels in your eyes we can see through the eye because it's transparent, and there is a number of advantages. An eye scanner is 20 pounds cost. A cardiac MR scanner is a few hundreds pounds, so an order of magnitude more expensive. Second, we can put a system like a scanner for the eye in every optician in High Street, in every town. However, we can't put a scanner in every town. And even if we put that scanner, we will not have an expert cardiac imager and cardiologist to do interpretation of those images. So what we have developed with my colleagues in Manchester is a number of AI algorithms that can utilize the data that we capture in an optician or in ophthalmologist to identify the risk of having a cardiac scan, and if you have a cardiac failure, a myocardial infarction, if you have a myocardial infarction risk that is higher than a certain amount, you can be directed to a specialist hospital. So you could do the analysis in every village, in every town, but send people that need extra attention to a specialized hospital in a larger city. But in the future, we might be able to develop an integration of these algorithms together with hardware, like smart glasses with the smartphones, so that we can do our eye scans almost at home. We need even to go to clinic, give us information, have similar our healthcare records to know what is our risk. As we move forward, a number of researchers from the NIH and myself participating in this did a roadmap that discussed how we actually can use this idea of prediction of myocardial infarction in the heart, from osteoporosis. And we believe that in the future this will be possible. So today we are already able to do some of the things. This is the paper where we do the prediction of myocardial infarction, and where we can show that we can get an 80% accuracy from a very, very simple test. The second example I want to show is to solve another problem, not a problem of a single patient, but a problem of all the governments and the healthcare systems in understanding which interventions they should be investing more money on. The first rule of all the clinicians is not to harm. This is what is called the Hippocratic Oath. But when we look at the way that we develop technologies, whether there is imaging systems, new implants and prostheses, or new drugs, this takes a very, very long time at the moment. And the way we normally generate evidence for developing these technologies is through bench, animal, and human testing, clinical trials. But they are not good enough. A study, an organization called the Implant Files, showed that products that went through FDA clearance, so these are products that went through all of the testing phases, so 10 of these products over a period of 10 years led to about 83,000 deaths and 1.7 million serious adverse effects. And in the UK, the Cumberledge report led to very similar results. And I'm sure that the numbers are similar, or the proportions are similar here in China as well. If you look in products that are being tested, for every 100 complex medical devices that we test, only about 30% of them will ever be in the market, because 70% of them tend to fail. And in the process of failing, there is about 41% of people that were participating in those trials that will remain with an implant or a device for the rest of their life that is non-commercial. In drugs, this is worse. It's about 5 drugs every 100 get to be approved, and 68% of the patients that are tested those drugs will remain having investigational drugs. So also, when we look at the development of trials, this is also very, very expensive. And one of the biggest problems that I want to signpost here is that when we do trials, we don't tend to test in all possible demographics. There are certain demographics, for instance, if you're in people who have Black origin or Hispanic origin represented in most of the trials. And I'm sure that in China there is a similar situation, that is that for whatever reason they get less participants in those studies. So what we want to do in these trials is to test medical products in virtual patients rather than. And if we do so, develop models and simulations of subjects, different behaviors of clinicians, the behaviors and the interactions between patients, and how that maps into clinical outcomes, what we can do is move to a situation where rather than doing the beginning of the period, sorry, I don't think this is working. The line, that is the one that represents what we do at the moment. We do relatively little testing early on, and when we try to go to clinical testing and regulatory approval, all the problems start appearing. And as a consequence, the cost of fixing those problems becomes more and more expensive. What we want to do is use digital twins and virtual technologies, like we do in other sectors, to test devices much more thoroughly from the beginning. So by the time we go to clinical human trials, we are almost certain that our technology will work. Very much the way that we develop airplanes or we develop cars, right? We first simulate, we test thoroughly, and then we really try with the pilot to fly them. People who have done this have shown that you can go, on average, 2 years earlier to market, that in 10 years of typical average time to market is a massive advancement, that you can reduce the amount of humans in which you can need to do the testing, that you reduce the cost of the trials themselves, and that because you went earlier to market, you're already getting revenues from sales earlier on. So very quickly to show one example, this is an area where I've been working for a number of years. These are devices that are used to treat brain aneurysms. And what we do is we use AI technologies like United Imaging is developing to extract from images three-dimensional models of many, many subjects on a very large database. Then we can virtually implant those devices into each of those subjects. We can test what happens when those patients have different lifestyle, behavioral characteristics that have to do with their physiology, and also we can test in a head-to-head manner different devices and compare them to one another. And this is quite important because we can then realize which of those products have the greatest chance to be successful. So in a recent publication, we show that we can reproduce to a 5% accuracy the results of 3 randomized controlled trials. But each of those trials was probably about £40 million and 8 years, and we could do these simulations in about 3 months for a fraction of the cost. So the green bar, that is our in silico model, and the purple bars were the 3 trials, POOFs, Premier, and Aspire, showing that particularly in acute response, which is the 6 months of first year, we have approximately the same accuracy. The interesting thing is that with our in silico trial in green, we could also look at what happens if all of the patients are hypertensive, for instance, or normotensive, if their characteristic change. Show that just because of the different physiology lifestyle, there is a much larger difference between that than between actually the different trials themselves. The other thing which is important is we can show what is called off-label uses. So these are devices that are developed and approved for one sector of the body, but then you want to use it in a slightly different area because patients also come with aneurysms in this domain. And to do that, what we have shown is that using these digital twins and in silico trials, we have shown that you can get, for the non-fetal variant, which is the general population, approximately the same outcome that in areas where we have the device approved. However, the problem is that there are variants of the brain that corresponds to certain ethnicities where the response can be about half of the response that we have in the regular population. So as a consequence, there are certain people for which we are actually systematically treating them in an unequal way. So in the future, what we are trying to do is advance what we call regulatory science and innovation, working with colleagues from FDA and other geographies, and I would love to be able to talk to people from CFDA here in China and look at how we can develop similar ideas in China as well. And also, with colleagues in the UK, we have generated documents and roadmaps that explain that vision and articulate and quantify the benefits of those. And I'm not going to get into the details of those, but there are benefits, I could say, not only for patients, but also for the economy associated with better care. And recently, there was a center that being created in Manchester that is focused on these technologies that I explained. What we are trying to do in this center is take these ideas and work with a national coalition of colleagues where we are trying to test similar concepts across a number of medical products, because I show you one example, but what we are now looking is at different areas, like in respiratory medicine, in cardiovascular domain, in neurotechnologies, in orthopedics, in pharmaceuticals, you can apply these technologies, and in radiotherapy as well. And hopefully this change of mindset will be picking up. Our vision is that in the future, we will need to take decisions not only based on animal, veg, and human testing, but also incorporating these modeling and simulation technologies where AI is a strong component of. And many people talk about the importance of creating digital innovation zones. And every country is doing it in different ways, but having a digital infrastructure to deploy AI and to deploy services like the ones that I explained is going to be really fundamentally important. So just to summarize, I hope that I helped with this talk to give a bit of a perspective on different applications for AI and digital twins in medicine, some of them that have a potential to benefit patients directly, and others that can benefit device and drug manufacturers and indirectly also bring a benefit to patients. Thank you.